working on our issue. We got a presentation that's not, we're downloading it now to the website, so that should be done here shortly. Before we call the roll, we won't call the roll till we get our technical issue taken care of. I'd like to welcome everyone to our sixth and final meeting of the Interim Joint Committee of Transportation for the 2025 interim. Before I call roll, remind everyone, including myself, to silence your cell phone. And all meeting materials today are currently available on the Transportation Committee page on the LRC website, except the one that we're working on currently. I know Co-Chairman Blanton has an introduction, and any other members have introductions we can do while we're waiting. Go, Chairman Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to recognize with us today the leadership class from the Kentucky Petroleum Manufacturer Marketing Association, and got to meet with them earlier today. Fine group of young people, up-and-coming leaders in the petroleum industry. So would you please join me in welcoming them this afternoon?
Also, Mr. Chairman, next Tuesday, I believe it is, the 11th, is Veterans Day. We won't be here that day, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the veterans here in the chambers today and those across the state and the nation. Thank them for their service. We certainly appreciate it. Representative Hale.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. May I make an introduction, please?
Yes, sir.
I'm honored to have in the audience with me today one of our circuit court clerks from Montgomery County, Miss Tanya Terry. Please make Miss Tanya wave. Tanya, wave your hand. I can't hardly see you through all the cameras there. Make Miss Tanya welcome today.
Okay, we're ready to proceed. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Senator Chambers Armstrong. Senator Berg. Senator Carpenter. Senator Douglas.
Present.
Senator Elkins. Senator Smith. Senator Storm. Senator Wheeler. Senator Williams. Senator Wilson. Representative Bivens.
Here.
Representative Branscombe.
Here.
Representative Bridges.
Here.
Representative Donworth.
Here.
Representative Dossett.
Present.
Representative Elliott.
I'm here.
Representative Hale.
Here.
Representative Heverin. Here. Representative Hodgson.
Here.
Representative Huff.
Here.
Representative Imes.
Present.
Representative Lehman.
Here.
Representative Lewis. Representative McCool. Representative Neighbors.
Here.
Representative Rorks.
Here.
Representative Smith. Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Here.
Representative Thomas.
Present.
Representative Upchurch.
Here.
Co-Chair Blanton.
Present.
Chairman Higdon.
Here. We have a quorum? Mm-hmm. We do have a quorum and duly constituted to conduct business here. Members have been provided with the minutes from the October 14th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, we have a motion on the minutes and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The minutes are approved. Our first item on the agenda today is myself. So I'll turn it over to Chairman Blanton. Chairman Blanton.
Thank you, Chairman Higdon. I'm just going to chair from here. It's just a couple seats over, so I'll be a little off center. Alyssa Burns, are you here? You want to come to the table with the senator or the chairman? And once you get there, if you all would please introduce yourselves for the records, and then you may begin your testimony, Senator.
Hi there. Firstly, I'd like to thank the members present today and thank you for the opportunity to represent my daughter today, and my name is Alyssa Burns.
Please make sure, Ms. Burns, that your mic is on. The green light should be bright green and pulled up closer to you.
Do you want me to start over?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Chairman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you already know, I have Alyssa Burns here. Kimberly was killed by a distracted driver, and we'll hear her testimony here in just a minute. And we welcome her today and thank her for takes a brave young lady to come and talk about the loss of a 2-year-old daughter. We're talking about distracted driving here today, and a piece of legislation that I will introduce this year. Kentucky remains to be one of the few states without a comprehensive handheld phone ban. Despite rising fatalities and this being a law in all 7 of our neighboring states, they've enacted similar laws. Like I said, we're one of the few states without a law. The proposed legislation would close current loopholes by requiring hands-free technology for cell phones to be used while driving. Mr. Chairman, in 2023, that's the latest figures that we have, 814 people were killed in collisions on Kentucky's roadways. About 51% of the fatalities involved individuals who were not wearing a seatbelt. That is disturbing. If that 51%, I don't know what the percentage of those who were survived the wreck they'd been wearing a seatbelt. So, and also in 2023, approximately 16% of the fatal crashes involved alcohol. About 33% involved speeding or aggressive driving, and about 20% involved distracted driving. I'm sure that figure is much higher. I don't think we keep adequate records of distracted driving. And a broader benchmark, in 2024, Kentucky's traffic fatality rate was 1.45 deaths per 100 million vehicle miles traveled in the state of Kentucky, placing the state 9th highest in the U.S. for that metric. Also included in that statistics, 104 motorcyclists died on Kentucky highways. That's almost 15% of the deaths. 15 bicyclists lost their life, and 123 pedestrians lost their life. Every time I hear a traffic fatality, either a head-on collision, road departure, motorcycle hit by a vehicle, pedestrian hit by a vehicle, or a bicyclist hit by a vehicle, I ask myself the question, could this been caused by a distracted driver? And I believe a majority of the times that's what caused the accident, is the driver was distracted. So this piece of legislation will deal with that. But before we get started, I want to hear the testimony from Kimberly's mother, and she will tell her story about her daughter's tragic death. Alyssa, the floor is yours.
Like I said, my name is Alyssa Burns, and this really has nothing to do with me and everything to do about a little girl named Kimberly. And I would like to tell you a story about her. She was the funniest and kindest, sweetest little girl. I'm sure you all can relate. I'm sure everybody's kid is the sweetest. But water was one of her favorite things. And so, of course, bath time and dogs' water bowls were her favorite plaything. And other than outside, my nature-loving girl just wanted to sit with her mommy and play in the grass. October 28th, 2022, we got Cammie ready to go to her nanny's house for Halloween. She had picked out her own Halloween costume this year, and she was going to be a scarecrow. So we were all going to come back and be scarecrows after we had her weekend. And so that morning we just kept it slow and steady. And usually around this time, she was ready to go see her nanny. And, you know, I needed a break too. But also her Uncle Sammy, who was only 17 at the time, was there. And they were besties. So They were each other's entire world. So after a peaceful morning, we started to get ready to go, and I get her buckled into her car seat. She hadn't had a nap that day, and so I knew that she was probably going to fall asleep in the car. And so we started driving, and I'm putting on music, Salen's, driving. I'm messing with my phone. And the next thing I hear is he says, "Oh, crap." And I look up and I see that we're stopped in traffic. And I didn't think anything of it, really. I thought, okay, time for her to nap. Cool. So, and it felt great outside that day. So I was like, windows down, we're good. I look back at her, and she is definitely on her way to sleep. She's got her binky in her mouth, her cover up to her face, and her eyes are slow and steady. And I turn back around, and black. The next thing I remember is someone saying, "Your daughter's gone. I'm sorry." And I remember nothing else. For the next few days or even a week, I don't remember anything else from a brain injury. So for 1,086 days, I had an angel on earth. And that seems like a long time, but it's not. It's nowhere near long enough. She was nothing less of a pure light, put on this earth basically to save her mother. And our children truly are our lives and our future. But my child was not only stripped of that light within a blink, she was robbed of her future, and she could have been the doctor that saves your child, or who knows what she could have been. We'll never know her full potential because of a reckless driver, who, by the way, was not prosecuted only because he said he wasn't paying attention. He had no drugs in his system. He had no alcohol, just "I wasn't paying attention." Those simple words got him free. She was buckled in her car seat safely. It was a construction zone. He was a habitual speeder who had been caught multiple times. We were at a complete stop. Witness testimony has even gone further to say that he was road raging and tailgating others prior to the accident. Accident, I say lightly. I like to say crash. The words from my Commonwealth was, "We're trying our best to curb these ills, but we're so sorry Riker's actions do not warrant a felony arrest." Riker's actions do not warrant a felony conviction. But an innocent child was torn apart, literally. Her injuries being, she was nearly decapitated, her eye was out of her socket, every bone in her back and neck were broken. Her head was split open, and she was pulled out of a 4x4 space. In the eyes of our Kentucky Commonwealth, using your vehicle as a weapon or a toy and it ending in the death of a child doesn't warrant charges. Why? Why wait until it's your child to care? And granted, I was ignorant myself. I did not realize that our laws were so broken. I did not realize that we did not have things in place for this. And my daughter was 13 days away from her second birthday, and instead I'm holding public rallies and walkathons and telling her younger sister that she shouldn't be the oldest living child. Instead of saying sorry, help me do something about it, because this can happen to anyone, including you and your children. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true. I'll never know what took his attention away from saving a life that day. I don't understand, and you shouldn't either. This wasn't an act of God or a sickness or a failure on my end as a parent. And yet she's gone. So please, if you don't vote yes on the hands-free bill today, I just ask that, I just ask that you help me. You help me in continuing making our roads safer for our future. Because my daughter deserves to be here. I know this bill does not bring Camberly back, and it doesn't bring the justice that is due, but it plants a seed for safety and security for our future. And I'm here to support and help pass this bill, and I just ask that you do too. Thank you.
Alyssa, thank you so much. I know it took a lot of courage to give that testimony. as I said earlier, there was 814 fatalities on Kentucky roads in 2023. 20% of those were caused by distracted drivers. Again, I believe that number was higher. That would be 162 deaths, including Camerlee, on Kentucky highways. As you all know, there's been a hands-free bill proposed in the General Assembly for years now. This bill that I'm going to introduce was taken. I don't mind copying another state's legislation, but it came from South Carolina. It addresses a lot of the issues that we had last year with the bill that we proposed last year. And out of respect for my good friend Johnny Turner, Johnny said he would always vote for a hands-free bill as long as it did not preclude him from reloading his gun. I said reloading. This would not preclude Johnny Turner from doing that. So rest in peace, my friend. Like I said, this bill is basically what it does. It makes it unlawful to have a handheld communication device in your hand. It does not include a citizen band radio, and while operating a vehicle on a public highway in the Commonwealth, the person shall not hold or support with any part of his body a mobile electronic device. He should not read, compose, or transmit any text messages. They can't watch moving images, including but not limited to videos, movies, and games. This bill shall not apply to a motor vehicle operator who is in a motor vehicle that is lawfully parked or stopped. And that was one of the catching points last year that a lot of folks said that if you're stopped at a red light, you should be able to look at your phone. So that deals with that. If you're legally stopped, you can look at your phone. It also, you can initiate a voice-based communication that is automatically converted to a text message. It does not prohibit reporting an accident or emergency. It does not prohibit transmitting or receiving data that's part of a digital dispatch system. It does not prohibit first responder while performing their official duties. It does not prohibit using an electronic device for the purpose of navigation, initiating or ending a cellular call, or unlocking the device. It does not prohibit using the equipment or services installed by the original manufacturer of the vehicle. Also, we had some concerns last year because it was kind of vague what a police officer could do in case a vehicle was stopped or a person was stopped for using a handheld device. The bill says that a police officer shall not stop a person for a violation of this section unless the officer has visually observed that a violation has occurred based on the officer's clear and unobstructed view of the person who is unlawfully using the mobile electronic device while operating a vehicle on a public highway. The officer shall not seize, search, view, or require the forfeiture of the electronic device. An officer shall not search or request a search of a motor vehicle operator or passenger in a motor vehicle solely because of the violation of this section. An officer shall not make a custodial arrest based on this violation. The fines for this violation are $100, and it'd be $100 plus court cost. And it's not etched in stone yet where the $100 would go in this legislation. Right now it says that 35% of it would go to Traumatic Brain Injury Trust Fund, 35% of it would transfer to Kentucky Trauma Care System, and 30% would be transferred to Veteran Program Trust Fund. In closing, I would encourage each of you, members of the Transportation Committee, to include in any of your articles, Facebook posts, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, or any messages or anything that you do to include a message that promotes highway safety. Because as a Transportation Committee, not only do we build roads, but we need to encourage people to operate their vehicles safely on our highways. This is a winnable battle. We can, with this piece of legislation, we can reduce deaths on Kentucky highways. And like I said, as many as 814 were killed in 2023. Don't have the totals for 2024 yet, but each and every one of those deaths were preventable. And be glad to entertain any questions you might have about this legislation. And hopefully this is the year that we can pass a distracted driver's bill. Like I said, every state contiguous to Kentucky has a law that says, it's against the law to have a handheld device in your hand while driving. And hopefully we can add Kentucky to that list as you cross. As Kentuckians, as we go into other states, maybe if we practice not being on our phone here, we won't get ticketed in another state. So be glad to entertain any questions you might have. And again, thank you all for hearing this legislation, and thank Alyssa for being here today and her bravery and testifying before this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Burns, for being here. Our sincerest condolences that you've had to go through what you've went through in the loss of your daughter. Back in my day in working with the highway safety program, our goal was always to get to 0 fatalities. Now, we're never going to be able to take the human factor out. Realistically, will we ever get to 0? No. But we owe it to the citizens of this Commonwealth to do everything that we possibly and humanly can to reduce those numbers as low as we possibly can. We live in a day and age when everybody has these things. And we take them for granted in that when we're even driving our vehicles, we utilize them. The most reckless driver that I ever got behind in my life, and I went from literally Clay City, Kentucky to Lexington before I could get them stopped because I was with my family. And turns out it was a young person on a phone, and they were all over the road. They were on the shoulders of the road, and it's dangerous. And so, part of our responsibilities in passing legislation and creating laws is protection of the people. And if people aren't willing to make the decision to have better habits in the way that they drive and conduct themselves, then the onus falls on us to require them to do that. And that's what this piece of legislation does. I fully support the legislation. And with that, we do have some questions. Thank you for being here today, Mrs. Burns.
Thank you so much.
And for your touching testimony.
Thank you.
Senator Smith.
Yes, I have a few questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of remarks. Representative Higdon, you've been called that in your tenure here, and Senator Higdon, and Chairman and leadership. You've served a lot of roles here in this state.
And I was going to remind you, you're one of the few sitting on this committee today that went through the seatbelt legislation, right, and was kind of the same odds when we passed seatbelt legislation. Nobody wanted us to require them to wear a seatbelt, but seatbelts save lives. And sorry to interrupt your question.
No, not at all. You were getting to where I was headed to. You've had a lot of monikers since you've been here, and friend is one of the greatest, but I'm going to give you another one. A statesman is something my father always said, it doesn't matter because you can't call yourself that. It only matters if somebody else calls you that. And the work that you've done here, I want to say you truly are a statesman, Senator Jimmy Higdon, and I think most people in this room would agree. On my desk, there's a picture of a little girl, and a lot of people ask me, "Oh, is that your daughter?" I've aged and gotten older and stuff, but that little girl's never aged. Her picture's still the same as it was almost 16 years ago when it came to me. She was a little girl named Marcia Nicole Neese, and it's kind of nice to say her name again because I promised that family she'd never be forgotten. Her death was killed by a distracted driver, hit her on her bike and knocked her off of a bridge. And after searching for her most of the day, it wasn't until somebody had dip in their mouth to spit off of a bridge that they found that child. And as I heard you do your testimony today, it's very difficult to hear that. Bless your heart to get through that. But again, like this young lady, your daughter will be remembered because we'll make sure of that through our actions here. But I applaud you for the bill. I think the $100 is a good starting point. I would not object to seeing some community service to it because I do think that sometimes people make mistakes, but to make them go through and have some part of this where they have to spend some time either working on cases or seeing the results of their actions. It may be the first time we catch somebody and help them never do this again. But I wanted to say that to you today as a colleague that's known you for a long time, that you have risen to being a true statesman, and the work that you've done here, Jimmy, is going to be remembered for a very, very long time. And so I applaud you for your efforts. I've spoken too long, but I'm very happy to lend my support to this bill in honor of all the children and young people and families and mothers and fathers and aunts that we've lost over something so silly. So God bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Smith, and I'll need that support to get out of the Transportation Committee. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Representative Donworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Ms. Burns, my mom heart hurts for you so much, and I'm so sorry. I remember that age of 2-year-olds and how the sweet sass that comes with it. And I'm just so sorry. And I think this legislation is long overdue. So I want to thank Chairman Higdon for bringing this forward and to you for sharing your story to try to make sure that this goes through. Chairman, one question that I do have is, would this apply to all public roads or just to state highways?
Yes, it would be all public roads.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. And then a concern that I have habitually, I represent parts of Lexington. It is incredibly hard for our law enforcement officers to rely on the ability to see something happening in the act. And that is my concern with this, is relying on an officer being able to see into someone's vehicle to see whether or not they are using their phone, especially since it is often down in their laps. So I just would encourage some other opportunities for enforcement through there.
I'm glad you brought that up. I believe in the legislative process, and we'll pass it out of the Senate and send it over to the House, and that'd be a great opportunity for you to make a change to it if you so desire.
Yep. Thank you.
Representative Hodgson.
Yes, Senator, I have more of a technical question, I guess. All of us have been on the highway behind some idiot that is obviously oblivious to everything going on. They're speeding up, they're slowing down, they're swerving, they're texting, you can't even get their attention. But most of us, I think, now have a modern vehicle that has some kind of a voice interface with the car. But occasionally I have to reach down and unlock my phone, or do something to take it off of what it's doing there, and I'm not operating in an unsafe manner. If a police officer happens to pass me at the moment I'm unlocking the phone, am I liable for a $100 fine? And I guess the second part of that question was, if a police officer said, I saw somebody using their phone, and the person said, no, you didn't, and they don't seize the phone, what is that? Is it just what's the evidence that person actually committed the crime described in this bill?
Well, in the bill, it does. It says using a mobile electronic device for the purpose of it initiating or ending a cellular call in a manner that does not require the operator to type. If the device is not held by the operator or supported with any part of the body of the operator, So initiating or ending a call with the touch of a button, it would not be considered using the phone.
Well, but you got to have the phone in your hand to do that, unless you got it unless you're levitating the phone or have it on a magnet mount, I guess.
Well, that's I'm reading the legislation
my phone's probably
here.
like
It
yours,
says,
and it unlocks with a thumbprint, right?
this section shall not apply to a motor vehicle operator who is, and it goes on, using a mobile electronic device for the purpose of initiating or ending a cellular call in a manner that does not require the operator to type if the device is not held by the operator or supported with any part of the body by the operator. So as long as you're not holding it, if you've got it in a stand or which I think a lot of people would probably convert to when this bill goes into place. I know I've already done that. I've been practicing for a year now to drive hands-free. So the bill does say that you can touch it to end a call or to answer a call.
Okay, thank you.
And there's going to be some gray area. I don't think you could write a piece of legislation that describes every single concern that we have, but hopefully I'll get to send it over to the House to you, and you can work on that. Be glad for you to do that.
Thank you.
And I hope you get that opportunity.
Representative Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, I thank you and my sympathies to you, Ms. Burns. I know it takes a lot of strength and conviction to testify like this. And thank you, Senator Higdon. It is hard to believe that we're so far behind on this issue, and I appreciate your advocacy. I do have a question. The draft bill, if I'm understanding it correctly, it says that this would not be a violation where points are assessed to the license.
That's
Am I
correct.
understanding that, and can you explain why?
Well,
I actually thought that texting while driving was already a violation where points were assessed. Is that actually reversing that? If you could help me understand that.
I know I modeled it after the seatbelt law, where it's a prepayable fine, and so I'm not sure about the texting. If I need to go back and read read the part about texting and the law that prevents that. But again, it was modeled after the seatbelt law, which we passed in, I think, 2005, 2006, somewhere in that time frame. That says that, if you're ticketed for not having a seatbelt on, it's a prepayable fine of $25 on that. So again, I tried to model after that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, from my perspective, I would see this like most other dangerous moving violations, if not worse. I'd love to reconsider that part of the legislation. So.
I agree, and I try to deal with the art of the possible, and I'm doing everything I can to get this passed, and that would be one of the sticking points.
I mean, if that is the sticking point to getting it passed, I understand.
Again, I'm going to send it over to the House, hopefully,
right.
and you can work on it.
Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The senator has been here longer than I, and he knows that every good Senate bill should have something the House can fix so they can feel like they contributed to it. So,
you believe in the process also, correct?
So I did want to point out for unlocking the device on page 2, section 3 is distinct from ending a call. Unlocking the device for purpose listed in subparagraph 1 or 2 if the device is not held, okay? So I can unlock the device. I think this needs to be tightened up. My device, which just requires my thumb, is like pushing a button. But if I have a device that requires me to enter a password to unlock it, I think that should be restricted in this section as well. And so that's something the House might want to take a look at when we pass, because you don't want to be typing your password in as you're driving. But putting your thumb on the device to unlock it, that would be fine, I think, from the intent of the bill. So my 2 cents. Thank you to the House.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else with any questions? Yep.
Thank you, Miss Burns. I'm here. And thank you, Senator Higdon, for bringing this bill forward. I think it's so important that we as the Transportation Committee really set the standard for what citizens of the Commonwealth should be doing in terms of their behavior. And promoting behavior change is one of the most important things that we saw with the seatbelt law, that we see with work zone safety regulations. It's really about less about punishment and more about promoting the right thing to do on the roadway. The temptation is so strong, and honestly, I've talked to so many groups of high school students that bring this up as one of the most important issues for them. So again, I just want to thank you for bringing your testimony here today, and also want to say that World Day of Remembrance is coming up on November 16th, where we're remembering all of our traffic fatality victims, and I know your daughter will definitely be on our minds on that day. And I just want to thank all the work of all the family members who have really put these tragic deaths into action and sharing their stories and attending these events and forming community, so that way people do know the consequences to this type of behavior and reckless driving as a whole. Senator Higdon, is there any increased penalties for causing a fatality while using a cell phone?
There is nothing in this bill that says that. It strictly deals with using a handheld device while you're driving.
Okay. Well, I think this is a great first step. Again, that behavior change aspect is so important, and I do hope that as the conversation moves forward in the future, that we can look at what those increased penalties are, so that way when this does happen, families can see more justice in the court system. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Burns, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and look forward to getting this piece of legislation passed. And we'll get it passed out of the Senate, and the House has some good ideas. Or, we'll entertain those also. Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And next up on our agenda for today will be an update on our automated enforcement and work zones implementation. We have Major Eric Walker is here with the State Police, and we have John Moore, Jason Sawala with the Transportation Cabinet, and Chairman Higdon and I are going to flip roles here, and I'm going to go down to the table with KSP and the Transportation Cabinet, and then we'll get started. Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Blanton, the floor is yours. If you'd introduce yourself for the record and have your guests introduce themselves, and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. John Blanton, State Representative from the 92nd District, and I will allow the gentleman with me to introduce themselves.
John Moore, Kentucky's Transportation Cabinet Deputy State Highway Engineer, and I've got Jason Swallow on backup if y'all get too dirty.
I'm Major Eric Walker, Kentucky State Police, East Division Director, Kentucky State Police.
Jason Sawala, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to defer to the gentleman on my left and right for this update and the implementation of House Bill 664 that we passed this last session for the work zone speed enforcement program that is at least I would say still in the beginning stages, but definitely in the up and running stages. How about that? Is that fair enough? Whichever one of y'all wants to begin, you may do so.
Thank you, Chairman. As we strive in Transportation Cabinet, we appreciate the opportunity granted by the legislature to continue to be national leaders in transportation as we strive to provide a safe transportation system through work zone enforcement using cameras to facilitate facilitate enforcement beyond the work zone, to which will improve traffic flow in our work zones, slow folks down. It is safe for all of those involved. Wanted to mention the Gerald Lee Helton Act, what our goals are with implementation. Of course, first and foremost, improved work zone safety. That's for our workers. That's for the traveling public traveling through the work zones, as well as for law enforcement who are tasked with enforcing the speed limit within our work zones. Part of that is having their ability to enforce that work zone. Our work zones are notorious for lack of shoulders, lack of convenient opportunities to pull someone over to have a conversation, and this allows a opportunity to have safer enforcement beyond the work zone, where the typical section is restored to its traditional state. First and foremost, this is to save lives and to prevent injuries within our work zones. Want to reiterate again and again, this is not for revenue generation. We expect this to cost the Transportation Cabinet money over what we would collect in revenues. The difference is this is not an automated enforcement. This requires law enforcement to pull an offender over and have a conversation. This actually reduced a number of our vendors down significantly to ones that could support this opportunity. Just as a reminder, the requirements requires warning signs in areas that automated or work zone enforcement is possible. Have flashers that would be activated when there are bona fide workers present in the work zone, and of course we'd have to have speed safety cameras coordinated with law enforcement to identify the offenders. Common misconceptions we've heard as we've rolled this out: there are no mailed citations with this rollout. It is not always active. It is only active when there are workers in the work zone and when there's a law enforcement agents tied into the system. And again, to reiterate, this is not expected to be a moneymaker for Transportation Cabinet, but we support it nonetheless both for our employees, for our contractors' employees, as well as our partners in the law enforcement. Just to give you since the law was passed back in the spring, we've met with close to a dozen vendors, and many of them have told us that they're not for us, that they support automated enforcement, which is the back office. They'll catch a license plate and send a ticket in the mail. That is not what's happening in Kentucky. It is a direct communication between the camera and a downstream law enforcement agent. So that limited us down to a very small number. We've got one that we're working with currently that works for what we need, as well as works with KSP. And we have a small rollout through the winter that we're testing it out so we can review the impact, we can establish the policy, and set that and establish that for expanding in 2026. So as of right now, we have 5 units. They're deployed in Shelby County on I-64, Laurel and Whitley County on I-75, Martin County, Kentucky 3, and Fayette County, Kentucky 418. Just to give you an idea of the signage that folks will see along the roadside, the left picture is the picture of the work zone signage. We are aware of, we noticed it about a week or so ago that the signage on the interstate needs to be enlarged, so we're actively working to enlarge those signage on I-64 and I-75. But you'll see in each of the 4 work zones I've noted that you'll see these camera trailers set up that are active as of today. With that, I'll turn it over to Major Walker for him to share the KSP's portion.
Senators, representatives of the Joint Committee. KSP has worked directly with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Director John Moore since mid-July to evaluate multiple vendor options to move forward Kentucky's life-saving House Bill 664 work zone legislation. It was codified in KRS 189-2327, amended June 27th of 2025. Through these efforts, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet has contracted AccuCensus as the vendor best meeting the requirements established by the new work zone legislation. KSP provided direct input to ensure law enforcement needs were met to ensure smooth deployment of the selected vendor's equipment. KSP input identified the need for AccuCensus to include a certification with every validated enforcement action. This was to ensure Kentucky law enforcement had the necessary equipment certifications to successfully present court defense of any citations issued. The daily working, why is this important? The daily working certification of each AccuCensus automated work zone enforcement camera system is critical in that it also ensures Kentucky's motoring public the equipment being used to enforce this life-saving legislation is accurate. Equipment deployment, as Director Moore has indicated, is deployed on Highway 3 in Martin County, which is serviced by Kentucky State Police Post 9, Pikeville. Additionally, the cameras located on I-64 at the 35-mile marker are serviced by Kentucky State Police Post 12 in Frankfort. Equipment located in Richmond Road, Athens-Boonesboro Road intersection in Fayette County is serviced by also Frankfort Post 12. And the I-75 camera, which is located in Whitley-Laurel County, is serviced by KSP Post 11, the London Post. These sites have been utilized for testing of the automated work zone enforcement systems by KSP to ensure operability and to identify any issues requiring resolution prior to becoming fully operational. Training of 40 Kentucky State Police Post trainers was completed on October 13th, 2025, with these trainers returning to their respective KSP posts to begin training of field troopers and begin live testing of the deployed systems. This testing quickly identified an unforeseen information technologies, an IT issue, if you will, that required immediate system shutdown and the discontinuation of KSP training on October 15th, 2025. A working resolution was developed by AccuCensus IT staff working in direct coordination with KSP IT staff to correct a data sharing issue which was placed under further testing by a small group of KSP to ensure the patch, if you will, was effective. It was, and successful resumption of training and testing was directed on October 28th, 2025, with KSP coordinating with AccuCensus and the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet for live enforcement to begin at 0700 hours in the morning of October 31st, 2025. It has been working successfully ever since. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Jason, do you have anything you'd like to add? So as you've heard, it's an ongoing process. They are making sure to work out the bugs that they've encountered. I appreciate Mr. Moore in addressing some of the misconceptions. Unfortunately, we live in a world of clickbaiting. What gets the most attention? Truth and facts no longer matter to people. There's a lot of misconception going out, quite frankly, by people that I'm disappointed in because I know they have access to the legislation. And if they take the time to read it, they know the facts that they think they're putting out is inaccurate. This is about saving lives. This isn't a money grab. This is a system that pays for itself. This isn't about collecting your personal data to know you were somewhere at a certain time. I guess maybe so your spouse didn't know you were there. I have no idea. But this is not collecting data on people. This is sending data to an officer. This is not mailing you a citation. Who will hand deliver you a citation, and he or she will be very courteous about it. I assure you, this is about saving lives, nothing more. Anybody else that spreads any other misinformation or clickbait titles are flat out being dishonest with you. And we're already seeing an impact from just the signage going up. I'm hearing reports back from people in these work zones saying, you know what, they're putting these signs up and people slowing down already. I'm having people come to me and saying, hey, I'm seeing these signs now, what exactly this means, because I want to be, so this is already being impactful. And the bottom line, that's what we're seeking to achieve. I'll go back to the statement I made about your bill, Mr. Chairman. The goal is to get to 0 fatalities, and we only do that by putting forth every effort we can. I thank you, and we'd be glad to take any questions the committee may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your work on this this very good piece of legislation. And you're right, it will save lives. And I appreciate that. And Major Walker, thank you for your work. And also John and Jason, thank you all for your work on this legislation. Like I said, it will save lives. And it was well thought out, too, by the way. It had to I guess, thread the needle to get a piece of legislation that, like I said, wasn't manufacturing and sending citations through the mail. And so it will work. Representative Rourke has a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Chair Blanton, I wanted to ask about the signage component. I've noticed there is signage when you enter the work zone. I have a question about like when you're getting onto the interstate from another ramp onto the expressway, maybe after the initial signage has appeared. Is there additional signage for those who are entering the roadway into the work zone?
Yeah, so our intent is to sign each approach to the work zone to raise awareness that for anybody within the work zone that's subject to the cameras to have notification.
Okay, thank you.
It's my understanding, Representative, anybody that passes by that camera before they got to that camera will have been notified by the signage that they are about to approach or pass by this camera.
Thank you.
Senator Storm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More of a comment. Thank you, Chairman Blanton, working on this. And just Chairman Higdon always points out we should share to the public anything that we can regarding public safety. And I want to thank Officer Douglas, who's in my area, Kentucky State Police Public Affairs Officer, Kentucky Vehicle Enforcement East, for posting on his social media these photographs. And, Representative Lewis just walked out a few moments ago, but he and Representative Smith and I share Laurel and Whitley County, that area, that exit where this is being deployed. And we want to thank you all for the public service you're giving to our citizens. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I see no further. Representative Domer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. I drive I-64 through Shelby County pretty regularly, as well as the Athens-Boonesboro Road in Lexington, where 2 of the 5 are deployed. It is very well marked. It's very clear. If you are using a GPS system, it even forewarns you that it is time to slow down. So I think you all have done a really great job with this and look forward to seeing it deployed in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, seeing no further questions, thank you again for the update on this outstanding piece of legislation, and a piece of legislation that will save lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Next up, Matthew Cole, Commissioner, Department of Vehicle Regulation, and Captain Chris Baker, Driver's Testing Branch, Kentucky State Police. While they're coming forward, I do want to introduce or acknowledge someone in the room today. In the very back of the room, Steve Carney. Rumor has it that he is, wave at us there, Steve. Rumor has it that he's running for a position in Kentucky State Senate. So good luck to you. Gentlemen, introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Matthew Cole, Commissioner for the Department of Vehicle Regulation at the Transportation Cabinet.
Good afternoon, Captain Chris Baker, Kentucky State Police. I'm commander of the Driver Testing Branch.
For an update on regional offices and driver testing, first we wanted to reach out and say thank you for our great partnership with KSP. We work closely with them to constantly reevaluate our regional office capacity to support their testing efforts. We've jointly conducted several driver testing only Saturdays to help reduce the backlog, which has been driven down much quicker than we expected. Overall, for driver's licensing regional offices, we have 35 offices open now. That gives Kentuckians many choices for the locations that they want to come to see us for their driver's licensing and ID card needs. As far as innovation, we continue to explore any possible options for the next generation of technology that will help us provide services quicker and more efficiently. We do continue to apply continuous improvement. We use data-driven management tools and additional staffing to continue to improve our quality service and strive for better consistency statewide in all the regional offices. And for faster services, wait times have been cut in half since the spring through increased staffing, additional appointments, and our online or our line queue management system. Offices are now available to serve more customers daily faster and spend less for them to spend less time in the office with us. Average walk-in wait time was reduced from 49 minutes in April to 25 minutes in August, and our average appointment wait time improved from 25 minutes in April to just 15 minutes in August. So we are seeing improvement there. And I'll turn the rest over to Captain Baker.
Thank you, Commissioner Cole. And just to reiterate, we work very closely, Transportation Cabinet, Kentucky State Police, in this process. And the partnership is improving every day, I think, to better serve the citizens of Kentucky, to help get them in and out, because I know nobody wants to be there for 5 hours when they're getting their kid a permit or a license. Just want to give a quick update on our testing numbers. In 2024, all total, this is every kind of written test we give. We gave 194,216 total tests. But of note, I wanted to mention 147,460 of those were your Class D operator. As of October 30th, last week, we have given a total of 186,990, but a big increase. We have given 150,840 Class D operator. So we have, by the end of October, we have already given 3,000 more than we gave completely last year. I believe a lot of that is going to be House Bill 15 with the 15-year-olds. We have seen a slight decline in the skills test, or what you would call a road test, but I believe we will see an uptick on that because with the new law, a 15-year-old has to keep their permit for 180 days and be 16. Now we're past that initial 180 days, so depending on the age, we are starting to see, now we have 16-year-olds who are barely 16 and they've had their permit for 180 days, so we're going to see an increase in the demand for road tests, as we saw an increase in the demand for writtens early in the year. And we're watching that to try to adjust what appointments we have to give the citizens what they need. If we need to give more road availability at a certain office as opposed to written, we will do that. Kind of to mirror what he said, April, May, June was very difficult to get an appointment with us for testing. We have seen that get better. We do still see in the central part of the state around our larger cities, Louisville, Lexington, it's still hard to get an appointment. Now in the west and the east, you can usually get online and find an appointment available in the next 3 weeks, but it is still difficult in the central part of the state. Also, to give an update on the pilot program, which we worked with Senator Higdon on. Now these numbers will be for the entirety of the program. Just to give a quick background, in case you don't know, we started this program in September of 24 of 5 counties, where if you're a resident of that county, you're under 18 and you take a road test just for an intermediate license, you can test in your county. So initially that was Oldham, Barron, Shelby, Perry, and Grant. And Marion, I'm sorry. Shelby is what we just added. It was not Shelby, it was Grant. We have changed a little bit. We've taken Perry out because we were only completing 25% of the appointments that were available. In Oldham County, we have had 528 available tests, and we've completed 393. So 74% of those, that's been a very successful county. Barron County, we've had 506 available, and we've completed 329. That's 65%. What is encouraging, we just started Shelby County, I believe, in September, and out of 64 available, we've completed 61 of those. So that's been very successful. There again, I think when we get them closer to Louisville and Lexington is where the need is, and we'll continue to see that success. Marion County, we've had 480 available, and we've completed 192 for a 40% rate. And in Grant County, 575 available and completed 158. That is 27%. And this data is as of last week.
Okay. Captain Baker, sure, that program, and I know you made an adjustment in Marion County, and I appreciate that. Instead of eliminating that, you went from two days a month to 1 day, and that should take care of the lack of attendance there. We have any questions? All right. Representative Bevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you all being here. I'll first comment and then maybe a question if the chairman will allow me. So the uptick of tests you've talked about, I'll start off by first of all saying I don't think there's a single one of us that have not received a phone call or stopped at the store or anything else to talk about regional driving centers. It's got the point. Some people, you just make up stuff. You can tell them whatever they want to hear. They're not happy about them. And I completely understand. We talk about the uptick of the test, though. You brought that up. I would like to think that is going to fall off after we get through this first year, because you're dealing with not only 16-year-olds but also 15-year-olds, so you're doubling up, and you should level back out, I would hope, after that. I don't know if you all see that the same way or not. But, Commissioner Cole, I'd ask the question to you, I guess. First of all, cost. I know years ago, and this is before I came in the legislature, we talked about these regional driving centers. Part of the issue was the cost of what it would take to put it back in the counties. Have we done any kind of evaluation to see where our costs are at and if it truly has cost us more? Because anytime you add brick and mortar, you add employees, there's another cost that comes with that. And that's a problem I have with government. It feels like we're job creators. Everything we do, we create jobs all the time. So I'd ask that question. The other thing I would ask about is evaluations of these centers. So living where I live, I'm close to Elizabethtown, I'm close to Columbia. You have two centers there that I personally have been through. And in my mind, if you have got a business, I don't care if we use any kind of business, we use a convenience store, a fast food restaurant, they have operating procedures of how things are supposed to take place so that they're uniform and you're seeing consistency between these two centers. I can tell you personally, when I walk into those two individuals, and I'm not going to, the two I mentioned, I'm not going to say which one's bad, they are not operating on a similar level. So are we doing anything to try to smooth that out to make it to where it's more uniform, regardless of which one you go to, so that they're operating very similar? So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we have a weekly training that we have for all the regional office employees, and we do continuous evaluations between those. We do have higher performing offices compared to other ones, and what we do is we share the success stories and the leadership from the ones that are from the regional offices that are excelling, and we have them go and stay with the offices that need more training and more fine tuning. So we're continuously doing that to make sure that we have a consistent performance across all 35 offices.
Senator Douglas has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain Baker, this is more for my edification. When was the last time that there really was an update for the road tests for some of the new drivers? I mean, it's interesting. My kiddos are past that, so they went through all that. But I'm just wondering, do we update that road court or the road test, or when was it last updated, if I may? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator Douglas, for the question. So AMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, they put out standards, if you will, that we follow for testing. And I've been in my position since October of 23, and I believe it was just prior, it was either late 22 or early 23, the road test was updated. I can't speak to the exact date, but it was just before I come into the branch. But it was updated within the last few years.
Thank you, Captain Baker.
I don't see any other questions. I do have one. Matt, the Oldham County, we have a scheduled regional office to open in Oldham County. Could you give us an update on that?
We haven't established a location. We're still checking for options.
Okay, and I do, like I said, most of us do get calls. My Achilles heel has been the driver's licenses and the New Market Bridge. That's been the cross I've had to bear for a few months. But thank you all for your work that you do on it. Captain Baker, thank you for we've had a lot of conversations how to improve the system, and hopefully this next session we'll have a lot of ideals, and we'll share those with you, and you can share your ideals with us, and hopefully. And Representative Smith has
just real quick
question.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman. Has there been an update on these the selling of a license? Have you been given an update?
For as far as the KSP investigation,
yeah,
it's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
It is.
The other question I have is on the driver's part of it. That seems to be the biggest issue that I have in our area, down in the Corbin, Whitley, Laurel area, is getting in to do the driver's part. I've talked to some other members maybe of how we could farm that out, but I've gotten more negative feedback than I have. They'd rather the state police stay in charge of the driver's part. Do you have a comment on that? Do you see any? I had suggested the sheriff's department's been able to do it in the counties for the backlog, but I don't see that getting any slower in my area, even though we brought the 15-year-olds on. It's the distance that they have to travel to come get out of school, go and do it during that period when school's in session. Are you getting any feedback in that area as far as the driver's part of it? The written part I haven't heard a lot about. It started out maybe a little bit rough, but mainly it's the driver's part.
So just so I'm clear, sir, you're talking about agencies other than Kentucky State Police giving the road or skills test?
Yeah, I had suggested that to kind of help out with the load. Do you have that any thoughts on that? Maybe the local sheriff's department's having somebody trained in the departments to be able to do that for our local kids.
So that's the first I've heard of that. I know we're trying to give as much availability as we can, to give as many tests as we can. Each office is a little different on, some give a lot of written and some need more road, and we're trying to constantly evaluate to meet the needs. But no, I don't, that's the first I've heard of that, so I don't have anything on it.
Do you have a opinion on it? I guess is what I'm reaching for. What's your thoughts on it, having another agency like the sheriff's department? Is that something, I guess maybe you don't want to comment on the sheriff's?
Yeah, that's something we would have to look into and have some conversations with. I don't want to speak for any agency other than us.
Because I guess I'm trying to find a way to answer it on similar to Representative Evans, is when somebody asks me why they have to wait another month or so to get in there to get their driver's part. I was just looking for some options, but I just wanted your opinion on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Captain Baker. We've had a lot of conversations about local testing of the permit test and driver's test, in which you have the pilot project going on now with doing the driving the skills test locally, and appreciate your work on that. Basically, what we have with our driver's license, what I see, we have basically two issues. Number one is in the urban areas, it's difficult to get an appointment, and usually a month out. And the problem we have in the rural areas is the distance they had to travel to get the license renewal and the testing. So those are the problems that I see. Also, we've created the perfect storm with driver's license. We've had the 15-year-olds come online, vision testing to come online January 1, and the real ID deadline. So it's been kind of the perfect storm. So hopefully we're starting to work through all that, and before the 15-year-old fires up again. So hopefully we'll work through that, and we'll work this next session to with you all to try to improve the situation. And I know we already have plans for some additional regional offices to help that urban area. We just need to come up with a way to help our rural folks. and I think we could be in a better place. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Captain Baker. I appreciate you both. Okay. We have one other program or one other topic. James Ballinger and Jason Swalla. We're going to talk about procurement process and eminent domain.
Good afternoon. Jason Sawala, Deputy State Highway Engineer, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And Mr. Ballinger sends his regrets. He wasn't able to be with us today, but appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you a little bit today about the right-of-way process. And as John mentioned in his testimony earlier, we want to provide safe, efficient, environmentally sound, and fiscally responsible transportation, ultimately that delivers economic opportunity, enhances quality of life for our citizens and businesses here in Kentucky. And one of the primary ways that we do that at the Transportation Cabinet is through the development and delivery of Transportation Cabinet projects. So, road projects, projects from the highway plan. And so many of those projects require right-of-way. And so if you're looking within the road plan and you see these R phases, right-of-way phase, well, what is that? Okay, so that's the land that a transportation facility occupies. Okay, and in order for us to build, operate, maintain, we have to secure the rights to those pieces of property in order to build, and so we need to own those properties for road projects, and it's important for us to do that because as we go out and we need to maintain those projects, we need to make sure that not only can the project be constructed originally, but also that it can be maintained in a state of good repair throughout its life. And, one of the things that I want to get across to start with is that as we go through the project development process at the Transportation Cabinet, we are trying to ensure that we are minimizing the amount of property that is needed. We are minimizing the necessity to relocate utilities and those types of things, because not only because that's the right thing to do for the citizens and for the Commonwealth, but ultimately it helps those projects move more efficiently through the system. And so we're trying to figure out as we go through that project development design process how to best deliver that project with the minimal amount of impacts, but still making sure that we're delivering the improvement that's needed that's been identified. And so just here, I'm not going to read these, but there's a lot of laws and regulations and those types of things that are involved with the right-of-way process. And we've got a lot of process to make sure that not only are we compliant with those, but that we're able to do that work as efficiently as possible. And so, the things that are not explicitly mentioned up here, as we're doing the right-of-way process, we do appraisals, and whether that's done by the Transportation Cabinet or external folks, we figure out what the fair market value is of a property. And if there's a disagreement about that, there's a process to go through where the court appoints commissioners and, go out and look at those types of things to make sure that that's that's been done in a consistent manner. And then, in order to acquire those rights, the Transportation Cabinet has to offer just compensation, and all of these things are within within all of these. But most of all, in order for us to do all of these things, we've got to act in good faith and make sure that a couple months ago, I think I was up here for a different subject and mentioned that the right-of-way process takes time, and rightfully so, because, when we're out there and whether it's an agent, an agent of the cabinet is going and trying to acquire a property to build a transportation project, most of the time they're walking in and talking to either citizens or businesses about the need to acquire property to do a project. And the majority of the time that property isn't for sale. And the majority of the time we're also not buying a whole property or, those types of things. And so it's a complicated process. There's a lot of rules, but we want to make sure that we're treating those citizens and businesses fairly and consistently. And so when we think about that, again, when we talk about that right-of-way function, we're trying to acquire those real property interests so that we can build, expand, and or maintain transportation facilities. And so I'm going to talk a little bit on the next slide. Just because we're out there acquiring interest in a property doesn't necessarily mean that we buy the property outright. There's ownership rights can be acquired by fee simple, which is basically you buy it just like anybody would buy anything, the absolute and unconditional ownership rights to property. But then, depending on the use, we may only need an easement. We may not actually need to buy that property from someone. We may need a permanent easement so that if we've got a, like say, a drainage structure that goes underneath the road, but it's fully on the right-of-way, we may need the ability to go on a private property in order to, maintain that structure, clean it, those types of things. And so that's what a permanent easement is, and we compensate for that as we go through the right-of-way process because it's a need in perpetuity for the cabinet to be able to do that. And then the third type is a temporary easement, which is an interest in real estate for, it's very similar to a permanent easement except that it's time limited, okay? And so basically, if during the construction process, in order to construct something, we would need to set a piece of equipment on a piece of private property, or we would need to get on private property to construct a piece of a project, but we don't need it permanently to maintain the project or anything else. That would be a temporary easement, which is also something that we compensate property owners for. And so, as we look at that, we acquire right-of-way in three basic ways, okay? And the vast majority of those are done by agreement, okay? And so we go through the process, again, to appraise and determine fair market value. We make an offer, which may or may not be accepted the first time around. The property owner does have the ability to present a counter offer, and we try to work with folks. Like I've said, we try to minimize, as we go through the project development process, impacts to properties. They have the ability during the right-of-way process to provide us feedback and ask questions like, hey, could this possibly be changed or that? And our right-of-way staff works with the designers and the other project professionals on those sorts of things. But the vast majority of our right-of-way actions are completed by agreement. Then donation can be done where a property owner deeds to KYTC a piece of their property for the benefit of the owner. And this would be something like if you had maybe a commercial property that the project was going to put in a turn lane or something like that, and the property owner decided that they wanted to make a donation, that's something that is allowable by the statute and the process as well. And then the last one here is eminent domain, which refers to the power of government to acquire private property and convert it into public use, okay? And so as we look at these road projects, I mentioned early on that many times as our right-of-way agents and our folks are going and sitting and talking to folks about the project and what it is, people may or may not agree that you need a project. They may or may not agree on the way that the project has been developed or any various details, and may decide that they do not want to sell their property for that project. And so eminent domain is the process that you go through to prove public use and to make sure one of the things that I want to say is that not only as you go through the eminent domain process do you have to prove that your project is for public use, but you have to do that for every single property as you are going through that eminent domain process, if that is questioned. And so, like I said, in most cases, an agreement is reached between all parties, and a property owner feels that the cabinet's offer is not acceptable, it can be refused. Okay, and as that continues on, if it comes to a point where agreement does not appear that it's going to be made, the cabinet can initiate a condemnation action in order to further the process along. Like I said, each one of those requires the cabinet to prove that the acquisition is for public purpose. It isn't just, hey, this is what the project is, but have to go through parcel by parcel with those types of acquisitions to show why that particular parcel is needed for that project to fulfill its purpose. And the last thing that I wanted to mention about eminent domain in general is that some condemnation actions are required for other legal reasons, okay? And so it's not even necessarily that folks don't agree, but there may not be a clear title to the property. Like, let's say that the original property owner passed away and the heirs of that didn't go through the legal process to clear the title, to determine who the owner is. We actually recently had a parcel on a project that I believe had almost 60 who were unidentified and unknown heirs at the time that the Transportation Cabinet had to go and research and figure out who all of those heirs were and be able to contact them, because all of those different folks had an interest in this property, and in order for that property interest to be acquired, all of the people had to be notified and had to go through that proceeding. And so it's not always because agreement can't be reached. Sometimes it's unclear ownership. Sometimes there are other parts of the legal process that lend to that. But ultimately, as we go through that process within right-of-way, we are doing our best to not only communicate with those property owners what the need is to do the project and why their property is needed, but to work with them all the way through that process, even if something goes into condemnation, to try and reach agreement, because ultimately that's the goal, is to have agreement between the parties. And so there's processes within eminent domain. I mentioned the appointment of commissioners and things, and at some point, if those proceedings go far enough, the cabinet can post basically the amount that the commissioners have deemed that the property is worth, which may or may not be the same or different as the appraisal, in order to gain right of access to that property while the rest of the proceeding goes through. But ultimately, we're out there compensating folks for property in order to build the projects that are in the highway plan. And so with that, be happy, Senator Higdon, to take any questions. And beforehand, though, I will just say that the New Market Bridge is in the November advertisement that was advertised last Thursday. So just...
I got that question today, and I found that online and sent them that 177-page report on the New Market Bridge. So
yes, sir.
We'll see if they get all that read. There's another step, I think, in their mediation step in there also.
Yeah, and so as we go through the process, and there's a lot of different things that happen within the right-of-way process that I didn't, I just very quick update here. But as you go through that condemnation process, the ability to continue working with that property owner and discussing, with the attorneys present and all of those types of things is present as well. Yes, sir.
I will say that probably 99 and 9/10% of the projects that have been over the years have gone well and not to condemnation. I did hear watch part of an agriculture meeting earlier this week. There was an issue there. Representative Bevin was there. I think if there'd been another step, a common sense step, that the issue that they were talking about in the Ag Committee about I think it was in Western Kentucky, I think that could have been resolved. I guess they were dealing with a third party. Had they been had another step where they dealt with the Transportation Cabinet, and I believe that could have been worked out. And I don't know if that's something we need to work in there, another step, in case there is a major disagreement. But like I said, in my situation, probably 99 and 9/10% of the property owners we've dealt with have been pleased with the outcome. And I know Representative Bevin wants to say something, so I'm gonna go ahead and call on him. I know I got ESP. I know it's coming.
And see, that's what makes you the great chairman you are, Senator Higdon. Upchurch was over here telling me, no, you're not going to speak. You're not going to speak. And here, so thank you for overstepping him. So, we all love good roads. I appreciate good roads. We want good roads. eminent domain's a fact. It's just two words we never want to talk about. He was right. Last month in Ag Committee, and being a farmer, understand, I probably deal with this more than most others than just a person that owns a house and a piece of land that their house sits on. You know, there's numerous issues I have with when we come into roads, and a couple years ago there was a road redone in front of my place, and we had many issues we dealt with on that. You know, the first one that comes to mind, a lot of times we don't think about this. We construct a road to be what's best for the road, and we don't think about what's left behind. Drainage issues become an issue. A lot of times when new roads are constructed and we build bridges over tops of creeks, we don't think about the fact during a heavy rain event we're creating a dam that's affecting someone else's livelihood, someone else's property, because it's holding water back on those roads. I can take you to numerous different farms we have now that we have drainage issues because of the fact we have now constructed a dam by building a new road across this body of water to hold water back so we don't have normal water flow going out. I can deal with all that, and I can accept it for the betterment of good, but I think to hit on a little bit what Senator Higdon or Chairman Higdon talked about there, during last month's Ag Committee, we had a young lady come in and talk to us, and Commissioner, I'm glad you're in here to hear this too. And it was very disturbing to me, being a person that takes pride in what we do as a legislative body, elected officials. You know, when we talk about government, I feel like there's a finger pointing at me, just like there is at all of you with the Transportation Cabinet. But she got to talking about some issues that went on, and we were talking about putting in a drainage ditch, and it wasn't but 3/4 of an acre. You know, and it wasn't the third party that started out that bothered me. It was dealing with Department of Transportation employees. For one, letters kept being sent to an address that did not exist. And this wasn't just a farmer. This was an agribusiness that was highly well known in the area. Then they got served papers by the Sheriff's Department because of the fact they never did respond to this mail that was going to a phony address that they didn't know was being sent to them. And I understand lots of things can fall through the cracks, but when she went on to explain this, and I would encourage both of you to maybe try to reach out to this lady, because I think if you've got bad actors in your working under you, something needs to be talked with about them, but talked about the way they were treated, the attitude that went on. You know, I had an instance years ago with my father-in-law. He lost a part of his farm. The road was completed and opened to traffic flowing through before anything was ever settled. Well, if I drive down the road and I see a house and I think that's a nice house, I want to move in, I don't go over there and eat supper at the table tonight before the thing's in my name. That's something I have a hard time with, and maybe it's just some things, but you get back to that employee issue. That employee issue is something that really bothers, because that gives all of government a bad name. Not only you all, but it gives each of us a bad name as well. And that's, you treat people that's the way you want to be treated in life. And it goes back to what Senator Higdon said there about that step of common sense. We have to, we are here for the people. All of us are. I don't care if it's us as a legislative body, you all as a cabinet, you're here to serve the people and what's best for the people. And someone is not treating someone in that manner, in my opinion, needs to be dealt with. In fact, I challenged Chairman Dossett last month, and I encouraged him to talk to Chairman Blanton or even Chairman Higdon. I said, I'd love to see those individuals sit before our committee and answer questions of why they did the things they did and why they went about it that way. You know, because when you talk about it, and most people, I will be the first to say, most people will drive up and down the road and they will look at a piece of ground and think, wow, if we could put a turn lane here, we could put a better drainage ditch here, that would improve this road and infrastructure. We don't ever look at it from the other side of the fence of how it's impacting what's left. I can take you to a farm in my area that a road was reconstructed several years ago, and it was brought up this nice road now, super nice road. But because of how drainage ditches were put in tiles, water backs up and covers about 10 acres worth of that land that farmer was not compensated for. Now, if that farmer's making a payment, it's really hard to make a payment on something you don't have any income coming in on. So I think we've got to start thinking from that aspect. Also, maybe it's somebody's house or yard that we impact. How do we impact, or how do we take care of? And yes, it's going to cost more money on on the government side, but we've got to take care of those individuals that's impacted, maybe not directly, we did not take their ground, but the neighbors that are impacted because of actions we have took to build a road. And like I said, there's nobody that doesn't want good roads, but we've got to keep this stuff in mind. But I have no place for bad actors, and I would seriously encourage you all to reach out to this young couple to see how they were treated. And I think those employees certainly, they have questions they need to answer. So thank you all for being here today. Like I say, eminent domain is not something that's near and dear to my heart. It's not a topic we all like to talk about. I understand it has to be used sometimes, but I think we have to use it wisely. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Donworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman and Representative Bivens have both touched on. I really would encourage all the members on this committee to watch that Ag Committee meeting. I think some of the points that were brought up, it sounds like they are more of a staffing or an administrative regulation issue, but making sure that people are treated fairly. And yes, it can take longer and be slightly more expensive, but it also would not take as much cost because we wouldn't have to be fighting it in court, both for the property owners and for the transportation cabinet and the state ultimately. I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned that the cabinet is doing the appraisals on the properties that they're talking about buying. How do you make sure that there's no conflict of interest there?
So the way that the right-of-way process works is that there's a lot of different checks and balances, but the appraisals can be done by certified appraisers that are external, non-complex appraisals. Sometimes we do internally small amounts and things like that. Those are all reviewed by another third party that's not involved with the project, and the appraiser then can't be the person that goes and makes the offer. The person that makes the offer can't deliver the check. So there's a lot of different folks that are involved to make sure that those items pass through a lot of different folks and are reviewed by different people to ensure that there's not any single point where something can be skewed a certain way or anything like that.
I'm glad to hear it's done by a third party. That I was concerned that the cabinet was setting the prices on property that they were buying. So I'm glad to hear that's not the case. One further point, if I may.
Yes.
Okay. Would love to see the cabinet working with the property owners to not just to buy the actual land, but to be able to replace the infrastructure that is there that has to be moved or changed as a result of right-of-way and or eminent domain. I think that would go a long way towards resolving some of these issues and making sure that the people that are subjected to eminent domain are treated fairly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
So just a couple things there. So, when, like I mentioned earlier, there are times when not an entire property is purchased. And to Representative Bivens' point as well, looking at what the effects are of that property and what the road project, what the effect will be, because we also do drainage calculations and look at that, not just for like the flow under bridges and things, but what it does to floodplains and all of those types of things as well. But if a property, has some sort of damage or if something has to be taken or whatever, that is a part of that appraisal and is compensable under certain regulations and guidelines. And so, if say, for instance, a portion of your property is impacted and there's an improvement of some type on that property that's appraised and paid as a damage or offered as a damage as part of that fair market value of that acquisition. And so there's a whole process that has gone through, not just for, the square feet of the ground or whatever, or the main structure, but any change in the function of that as it is currently constructed today is taken into account throughout the process and a part of that fair market value offer and the subsequent work with the property owner to try and figure out how to come to agreement.
Thank you, Jason. Senator Williams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I did want to point out that right after you get that new Market Bridge done, I think the Singing Bridge would get emergency services to the department much faster if it were created. So, but I understand some bridges have some priority.
So you have Achilles heel also.
Yes, thank you. I did want to point out, whereas we look at eminent domain as some people look at it as an evil, some people look at it as a necessary evil. But the realization is, without eminent domain for roads, every road in Kentucky would be a toll road. Think about that. That's why we have eminent domain. Because at one point, every road in Kentucky was a toll road, went across private property. And we established this necessary evil so that we could have a transportation system that didn't rely primarily on tolls of private people. So that's just, it's a necessary evil. And my question on you, when we look at the road projects, a very significant portion of our road construction, I believe, is allocated to eminent, or total project eminent domain. I've heard figures from 25% to fit, like in some districts, it's up to 50% of the cost of the road is for the purchase of property for the individuals. Do you have, are those 25 to 50%? Is that an average of what we actually pay?
No, that would be quite high. Now, I will say that every project is unique, and depending on what the project is and where it needs to go and what those valuations of those properties are in that area, there are definitely projects that have right-of-way costs that exceed the construction cost, but in general, those are fairly rare.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Yes, thank you. And based upon one of your previous answers, this may not be the case. I think Chair Higdon talked about that there was a mediation process here. I'm assuming that's after litigation is filed.
So, without getting into the nitty-gritty details, after the offer is made and the property owner has the opportunity to talk to that right-of-way agent, ask questions and have discussion within the right-of-way process, and then once a condemnation action is filed, if that becomes necessary due to lack of agreement, we continue to go through the process and discuss with the property owner. And again, that can be anything from, hey, can the project be tweaked to lessen impacts on my property, or can it be altered in some way? Sometimes it's compensation, those types of things. But after the condemnation process has started, there's still that ability to have that back and forth discussion as that action is continuing.
So I guess my question was, listening to the prior testimony, if we had a mediation process prior to any condemnation actions being filed, if we could bring all the parties to the table, the property owners, the transportation cabinet, and the third-party contractors who, people performing these appraisals. I just didn't know if there was anything in regulation that or procedure that we sort of brought everyone to the table to give it one last effort before filing a condemnation action. So ultimately, the answer is no. You're telling me that the mediation process Chair Higdon was talking about was following the filing of litigation.
Short answer is yes. However, I think that going back to what I said during my presentation portion, we're making every effort. We do not want to go to condemnation. We want to reach agreement, and so we do our best to work with those property owners on these different things. And sometimes the issue isn't able to be mitigated if it's a technical issue. Sometimes the valuation of the property is so different than what the expectation is by the property owner that's not going to lead anywhere. And then you kind of get into that process where where the condemnation action is filed and the commissioners are appointed to go out there and provide an additional assessment of the property value. And so, but from the transportation cabinet standpoint, we're doing everything we can to reach agreement before we go to condemnation.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no further questions, Co-Chair Blanton and myself would like to thank all the members of the committee for your work this interim session, and won't be long. We'll be back here in a regular session. But I also like to take this opportunity to thank our staff for their hard work and dedication. We certainly appreciate you. So seeing no further business, I'd hear a motion to adjourn.